Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to episode number 88 of International Relations This Week. Under this series, every Wednesday at 8 p.m., we help you cover the important geopolitical developments which are very significant from India's perspective. We cover these topics strictly from a UPSC examination point of view. And if you're benefiting from this initiative, do let us know by pressing the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So let's start with this week's episode of International Relations This Week. Let's see what topics we are going to cover in today's session. We are going to talk about the offer that US has made for Pakistan to upgrade its F-16 fighter jets and the position that India has taken against this American offer. Next, we'll talk about the sanctions that US has imposed against an Indian petrochemical company for trading with Iran, as currently Iran is under American sanctions. And after this, we're going to talk about the key developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. There have been some major developments last week, and we are going to cover them in detail. Russia has formally annexed around 15% of Ukrainian territory, and in a related development, there has been accusations of sabotage at the strategic Nord Stream gas pipeline. So these are the key topics that we are going to cover in today's session. So let's start with the first topic and understand the significance of this development, where the United States has offered a $450 million package to upgrade the F-16 fighter jets that it has provided to Pakistan. So India, following this announcement, has criticized the United States publicly and expressed its frustration for helping out Pakistan increase its conventional capabilities against India. The US, on the other hand, has justified the move by stating that by upgrading the fighter jets of Pakistan, it will help Pakistan to counter terrorism in the region. So in this context, we need to understand the motivations for US to continue providing such aid and assistance to Pakistan, that to military aid and assistance. We should also understand India's position and where does this leave India-US relations. So let's take a detailed look at the topic. See, many of you would know that the F-16 fighter jets that has been manufactured by Lockheed Martin, a major US defense manufacturer, has been the backbone of the Pakistani Air Force. The US had sold the F-16 fighter jets many years back as a return gift, as a gratitude for Pakistan's help in creating the Afghan Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight back against the occupying Soviet forces back in the 1980s. Eventually, the Soviet forces were defeated by the Afghan Mujahideen, who were trained and set up by Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. So after US received this assistance from Pakistan during the Cold War period to fight back against Soviet Union, many years later, the US returned the favor by helping out Pakistan by supplying frontline fighter jets such as the F-16s. Since then, Pakistan has deployed the F-16 fighter jets primarily against India, thus giving Pakistan a conventional edge over India. So, the current package that US has announced, the $450 million package, it is meant to upgrade these fighter jets that Pakistan had earlier received. This will provide Pakistan with advanced capabilities for the F-16 fighter jets, which India sees as a threat. Now, this development is very significant because a few years back, when Donald Trump was the US president, he had ended all forms of financial and security cooperation with Pakistan back in 2018. Then President Donald Trump, he had accused Pakistan of playing a double game, of helping Western countries on one side to combat terrorism, and on the other side, backing the very same terrorist outfits. So he had criticized Pakistan for failing to act against terror groups like the Haqqani network and the Afghan Taliban, and he had ended the financial aid package of around $2 billion which was given out to Pakistan every year. So Donald Trump had suspended all forms of financial and security cooperation with Pakistan. Now, the Biden administration has announced a fresh package of $450 million through which Pakistan can upgrade its F-16 fighter jets and bring in new additional features which will enhance Pakistan's capabilities against India. Now, that's the reason why India has strongly criticized this development. India's foreign minister was in the US a few days back when this development took place. So India made its displeasure very clear and publicly stated that the US cannot justify this move as it could harm US-India relations as well. So in this context, we need to understand why would the US provide these military supplies to Pakistan? What could be the motivation to provide this upgradation package for the F-16 fighter jets? Many strategic experts feel that there are several reasons why the US might be providing this assistance to Pakistan, why the US is resuming its security military cooperation with Pakistan. One of the reasons possibly is because the US is happy with the way in which the Pakistani military leadership removed Imran Khan as the Prime Minister. A few months back, Imran Khan was removed as a Prime Minister following a political constitutional crisis. The US was appreciative of the role of the Pakistani military in this entire crisis because primarily Imran Khan was seen to be warming up to Russia. Earlier this year, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Imran Khan visited Moscow on the very same day when the invasion started. Gradually, Imran Khan was moving towards Russia and the US was seen not to be comfortable with this development. So there are allegations that the Pakistani military leadership might have played a role in getting Prime Minister Imran Khan removed, and the US might be returning the favor for this. There are also reports that Pakistan might start supplying weapons to Ukraine to aid Ukraine in its fight back against Russia. So the US appears to be pleased with this reported decision of Pakistan. There are also speculations regarding how Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri was killed in a drone strike recently in Kabul. Just a few weeks back, the chief of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was killed in a targeted drone strike by the CIA. There are speculations on how the US got this intelligence, because Ayman al-Zawahiri was hiding in a posh guest house that belonged to the Interior Minister of Afghanistan, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the leader of the Haqqani network and a globally designated terrorist. So the question is, who gave this intelligence to the United States, which helped in pinpointing the chief of Al-Qaeda and helped in carrying out this targeted assassination? There are reports that Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI, might have passed on this valuable intelligence. So now maybe because of this development, US would be returning the favor by providing an upgradation package for the F-16 fighter jets. There are also concerns for the United States regarding China's increasing military influence in Pakistan. Currently, if you look at Pakistan's Air Force, most of the fighter jets are dominated by Chinese JF-17 Thunder fighter jets, thus leaving US out as far as geopolitical influence in Pakistan is concerned. So this potentially could also be a driving factor for the US to counterbalance Chinese influence with the Pakistani military leadership. So any of these factors could have pushed US, or maybe a combination of these factors could have pushed US to announce this financial package and military package to upgrade the F-16 fighter jets. So following this development, India, as I said, was critical of this move, and Foreign Minister Jaishankar made it clear that US might say it is for fighting counter-terrorism, but the world knows and India knows that fighter jets are not needed for fighting terror outfits. It's very clear that Pakistan stations these fighter jets against India. It will give Pakistan a conventional superiority and it will give Pakistan an edge against the Indian Air Force. So India has said that you're not fooling anybody by saying these things, and India has asked US to take a relook at its relations with Pakistan. India has questioned the very stand or the foundation on which US-Pakistan relations are based upon, because Pakistan has betrayed the US multiple times. While trying to counter terrorism with US, parallelly it is seen to be backing terrorism, and many of these terror outfits have gone on to attack American interests. Hence, India has reminded US to reevaluate its relations with Pakistan, as the relationship doesn't seem to be benefiting either of the parties. The US, on the other hand, has justified this program, and the US has stated that its relations with Pakistan and India are independent of each other. The American ties with Pakistan stands on its own, whereas its ties with India stands on its own. See, if you look at India-US relations, the defense trade has really grown in the last 15 to 20 years. India is importing billions of dollars worth of military equipment from the US. Our strategic relations have grown. We are collaborating very actively in the Indo-Pacific through groupings such as the Quadrilateral. So when strategic defense relations are booming between India and US, it is quite surprising that US has taken the step to arm Pakistan, strengthen its military capabilities, which mainly harms Indian interests. So this is India's concern. While US is working closely with us as a defense strategic partner, we have a problem when US backs Pakistan, which gives Pakistan a deterrence against India. But at the end of the day, no matter what India says, you can't deny the fact that Pakistan has always been a critical ally for the US. Since 1960s, 1970s, Pakistan has always been a key non-NATO ally. In the areas of defense, security, intelligence cooperation, US-Pakistan have a history of collaboration, and it's unlikely to change because of the strong relations today between India and US. Also, we should acknowledge the fact that India looks after its own interests primarily, or any country in geopolitics is driven to look after its own national interests. So India follows a principle called the principle of strategic autonomy, through which we maintain ties on both the sides of the geopolitical world order. We engage with groupings like the Quadrilateral and Western countries. In the same week, we'll not hesitate to engage with rival groupings like SCO and countries like Russia and even China. So Western countries also have a problem here with India. They have a similar complaint against India. They complain that India works with Western countries and the very next day we work closely with Russia as well. So similarly, even US would look after its own interests. Just like India would protect its interests, the US would also play the same geopolitical game and engage with India while parallelly engaging with Pakistan. So that is the reality at the end of the day, and probably India will have to live with that reality. So this was a key development as far as India-US relations are concerned, and there is a related development as well, which forms our second topic. Few days back, it has been reported that the US has imposed sanctions against an Indian petrochemical company for trading with Iran. Some of you might know that Iran is currently under economic sanctions, and the US has brought these sanctions against an Indian private company which apparently was trading with Iran in the oil and petrochemical sector. So it's important to understand this topic in complete detail. See, the development was that the US Department of Treasury announced a set of sanctions against few private companies, petrochemical companies, that were trading with Iran. Amongst these 8 companies that have been targeted, one of them is an India-based company based out of Mumbai called the Tibalaji Petrochem Private Limited. This firm has a history of trading with Asian companies, especially Chinese companies, and as well as with many companies in South Asia and as well as East Asia. According to the US Department of Treasury, this India-based petrochemical company was purchasing millions of dollars worth of petrochemical and oil products from Iran, which is currently under sanctions, and then supplying this to various Asian markets, including China. So according to US, this was against the American sanctions, and hence the company has been brought under the sanctions regime as a part of the secondary sanctions that applies against such companies which trade with Iran in key sectors like oil and defense. So obviously, this issue is likely to have an impact on India-US relations, because India-Iran relations have already been affected and compromised because of American sanctions. I'll explain in detail how the American sanctions have affected India-US relations and India-Iran relations. So in this context, India is likely to bring up this issue because this is possibly the first time that American sanctions against Iran have directly hit an Indian company. So we need to examine the background to US-Iran tensions, why US is targeting Iran with economic sanctions, and how does this affect India. See, the US has been targeting Iran's nuclear weapons program since many years. Iran, which is a major Shia power in West Asia, has picked rivalries with the Sunni power bloc led by Saudi Arabia. It has picked rivalries with Israel. It has committed to wipe out Israel from the map, and it has picked enmity with the United States as well. So Iran, to secure itself against these rivals, has always pursued nuclear weapons from at least the last 20-25 years as a deterrence, as a security guarantee against Israel, US and Saudi Arabia. So US, of course, along with Israel, they have tried to target Iran's nuclear weapons program. Since many years, there have been active attempts to disrupt Iran's nuclear weapons program. US, Israel in particular have taken up covert action as well to derail Iran's nuclear program, and they have carried out targeted assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists. They have even waged a cyber war campaign by using computer malwares such as Stuxnet, especially around 2010, to disrupt Iran's nuclear centrifuge plants and to cause them to malfunction through a cyber attack. So apparently such cyber wars were waged by American and Israeli intelligence agencies to derail Iran's nuclear program. This was along with the targeted assassination of certain Iranian nuclear scientists. So these covert campaigns of US and Israel, they did slow down Iran's nuclear program, but it did not end the nuclear program. Iran kept continuing its pursuit of building a nuclear weapon, and in order to cripple Iran's nuclear program, US brought in very stringent economic sanctions, and the first round of sanctions were imposed roughly between 2008 to 2014. These hard-hitting economic sanctions, they mainly targeted the key revenue-generating sectors of Iran, that is oil, gas and defense. So these sections or these sectors of Iranian economy were hit with the American sanctions, and it did have a devastating impact on the Iranian economy. During this first phase of sanctions under President Obama, India was pressurized by the US to abide by the American sanctions and to stop engaging with Iran. But India couldn't do this because Iran was a key partner. It has been a key oil supplier. It has been critical to India's energy security. At one point, Iran was the second largest oil supplier to India, and India had many strategic investments in Iran. So the then Manmohan Singh government decided to bypass the American sanctions, and we continued our oil gas trade with Iran by making payments in alternative currencies. We used other alternate payment methods, including a rupee-based payment route, to pay for Iranian oil in order to bypass the American sanctions. So that way, India protected its independent foreign policy of not following American sanctions or selected sanctions against a targeted country. India also managed to protect its key interests with Iran and its strategic relationship with Iran. But in 2014, as the tensions increased between US and Iran, European countries mediated between them, and a landmark agreement was signed called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or also called the Iran Nuclear Deal. This deal was signed between Iran and the P5+1 countries, and as well as the European Union. Essentially, the 5 permanent members of UN Security Council and +1 referring to Germany, along with the EU, they negotiated the Iran nuclear deal, through which Iran agreed to scale back its nuclear program. And in return, the US agreed to lift the sanctions, and Iran was also made to commit to surrender the existing enriched uranium stockpile to European countries, so that Iran's nuclear program could come to an end. In return, European countries agreed to help out Iran in civilian nuclear technology. So the implementation of this deal, the Iran nuclear deal or JCPOA, brought down the tensions, and the sanctions were lifted, and India could now freely engage with Iran as well. Right? So this engagement or this arrangement continued for 3 years. But in 2018, the United States all of a sudden quit JCPOA. Then President Donald Trump, he made baseless allegations against Iran and pointed out that US had intelligence to show that Iran was violating the deal and secretly still developing a nuclear weapon. Following these allegations, Donald Trump made US quit the Iran nuclear deal and reimposed very strict sanctions against Iran. US even enacted a law called CATSA or CATSA, it stands for Countering American Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, that would place primary sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Especially their key sectors like oil and defense were targeted. So this time Donald Trump and his administration would exert a lot of pressure on India to abide by these sanctions. The Modi government tried resisting the American pressure, but eventually India had to follow the American sanctions as US brought a lot of diplomatic pressure on India. So in the last few years, India has been forced to abide by the American sanctions, and this has derailed our relations with Iran entirely. So currently, the Indian company which has been targeted with American sanctions, it's under the same arrangement, right? Indian companies are prohibited from dealing with Iranian petrochemical industry. So since this company was allegedly importing oil petrochemical products, it has been hit with American sanctions. So India's decision to follow American sanctions and to scale down our trade with Iran has of course affected our ties with Iran. See, Iran has been a key strategic partner, not just to counter terrorism in the region, especially in the Afghanistan-Pakistan belt, but it has also been a very key partner for us to link and connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. India has made some big investments in Iran, including the strategic Chabahar port that you can see in the map over here. India has made very big investments that allows India to connect directly with Afghanistan and Central Asia. India's vision was to leverage the roads that we have built in Afghanistan, connecting Zaranj and Dilaram, so that via Iran we could directly link with the Zaranj-Dilaram road by using the Chabahar port that was built by India. This could further enable India's connectivity with Central Asia as well. So over the years, India has invested millions of dollars on these key projects, and India was even looking to take part in the Chabahar railway line project to link the strategic Chabahar port with the road, the Zaranj-Dilaram road that India has built in Afghanistan. So these were India's key interests and key stakes that India had as far as Iran was concerned. From an energy point of view as well, Iran was a top supplier to India. At one point, it was the second highest supplier of oil and gas to India. When US brought these sanctions again in 2018 and forced India to abide by the sanctions and to zero out oil imports, the Modi government fell under the pressure and gradually cut off oil trade with Iran. Over the period between 2018 to 19, India scaled down its oil imports, zeroed out oil imports, and as a result, our trade volume collapsed. There was a 72% decline in the trade volume between India and Iran because India had overnight zeroed out oil imports from Iran. So obviously, as India abided by the sanctions, Iran retaliated against India and expressed its displeasure against India. Iran would go on to drop India from the Chabahar railway line project, and India's strategic presence in Iran has been weakened as well because of India abiding with the American sanctions. As you can see here, the numbers clearly indicate our trade volume has fallen drastically as India abided by the American sanctions. So it's in this context that the current development is important, because due to American pressure and American sanctions, India's influence and relations with Iran has already been compromised. Upon this, the US is now targeting an Indian company which apparently was trading with Iran in the petrochemical sector. So this issue is likely to have an impact on India-US relations and also on India-Iran relations. India is likely to bring up the issue with the US formally, and we need to see how things will develop in the coming weeks. Now, we come to the third topic. The fourth topic is also related to this particular development. So these two topics we are going to discuss provides us important updates on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Last week, Russia has formally annexed 15% of Ukrainian territory, and this is a very big development. This marks a very big escalation from Russia. As you know, from the start of the year, Russia has been at war with Ukraine. it invaded the country to arrest the westward expansion of the westward movement of Ukraine towards the Western countries. As Ukraine was seeking closer alliance with NATO, European Union and the Western countries in general, Russia has been pressurizing Ukraine and trying to teach Ukraine a lesson by going to war with Ukraine and even by sponsoring separatist war in Ukraine. In 2014, Russia retaliated for these developments by capturing and annexing the Crimean Peninsula so that Ukraine would be taught a lesson. It would even sponsor a separatist movement in the eastern parts of Ukraine. These tensions have persisted from a long time, and as Ukraine was getting closer towards the West, as it was moving more closely towards the US and NATO, Russia decided to mobilize troops against Ukraine earlier this year and has invaded the country as well. So in this conflict, Ukraine has been able to hold back, it has been able to fight back against the Russian aggression, and Russia right now seems desperate to declare victory in the war. Russia has captured few territories and controls few territories, and Russia wants to cement these gains and declare victory in the war. So in this context, Russian President Putin signed accession treaties which has formalized Russia's annexation of 4 important territories in Ukraine. I'll show you a map as well and explain which are these 4 territories. So this Russian annexation, which comes after the annexation of Crimea, this happens to be the largest forcible takeover of European territory since the Second World War. So this itself tells you how big the escalation is from the Russian side. If you observe this map, you can notice the areas where Russia has been able to capture and occupy territory in Ukraine. Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia has dominated the eastern Donbas region that you see here, because from 2014 itself, Russia had already been sponsoring a separatist war in Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia already had enough influence and backing by the separatists. So as soon as Russia invaded the country earlier this year, it has quickly captured most parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. These eastern parts of Ukraine have largely been under Russian control since the last few months. From the south and southeast, Russia has made rapid advances by stepping up its attacks through the Crimean Peninsula, and it has been able to capture key provinces, that is Kherson and Zaporozhye, where Ukraine even has a key nuclear power plant. So these 4 regions have largely been captured by Russia, where Russian troops control the region, and as Ukraine was able to fight back, as it defended its capital Kiev, as it defeated Russia in the Kharkiv region over here, that is in the northeast region, and inflicted Russia's biggest battlefield defeat in the recent past, Russia has become more desperate to register a victory and ensure that it protects its objectives, which it set out to achieve when it went to war with Ukraine. So Russia pushed these regions to hold a referendum last week so that these separatist held areas and Russian controlled areas would witness an election by the people, where people would vote in favor of Russia, thus giving a formal approval for Russia's complete annexation of this territory. So following these elections, Russia has even appointed few leaders of these regions, and with the backing of the separatist groups and rebels, Russia is firmly establishing control, and now these areas you're seeing here, that is Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporozhye, they're all set to become Russian territory essentially, thus shifting the front line of the war more closer towards Ukraine. This entire eastern southern part of Ukraine has been formally annexed by Russia, and Russia wants to cement these gains. And at the end of it, Russia would have captured 15% of Ukrainian territory. This would be the largest annexation Europe has seen since the World War days. The referendums that were held a few days back, they've all shown an inclination towards merging these regions, these 4 regions with Russia. But however, Western countries have criticized Russia's actions and they have refused to recognize the annexation and the referendum. Of course, in the eyes of the Western countries, these elections hold no value because largely it would be a manipulated election. So Western countries have declared these referendums as a sham, as a manipulated exercise. But Russia has claimed victory, and by taking the help of the separatist rebels and the leaders it has appointed into these so-called independent regions, Russia has now formally annexed the territory by signing a treaty with these leaders. And this will even be accepted by the Russian parliament through a legislation. So this will formally merge these areas with Russia as far as Russia is concerned. But Western countries and rest of the world may not accept this immediately because this is in direct violation of international law and the principles and the tenets of the UN Charter. Because the UN Charter does not recognize such forceful annexations. Such referendums will not have any legal value or any international recognition. Now, the implication of this development is that this furthers Russian territory towards Europe, towards Ukraine, and it pushes the front line. So now these areas, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye and Kherson, they are no longer Ukrainian territory in the eyes of Russia. Russia will treat this as its sovereign territory, and if it were to suffer any attacks or losses here, it will treat this as an attack against Russia itself. So Russia will go to any extent to defend these areas, as for all reasons, Russia will see these areas as Russian sovereign territory. So essentially, these areas of Ukraine will fall under the nuclear defense of Russia. So Russia will reserve the right to use even nuclear weapons if required to defend these areas, because according to Russia now, these are Russian territories because the annexation has been completed. So that's the reason why it's a very big escalation from Russia, and the Western countries, as expected, are retaliating. They have criticized Russia, refused to recognize this annexation, and they have pointed out that this annexation is not in line with the principles of the UN Charter. So to punish Russia, they have stepped up their economic sanctions as well. US, Britain, and even other European countries, they are bringing fresh rounds of sanctions against Russia to target the key sectors like defense, technology, oil and gas, etc. Top officials, elected representatives, their families, their assets are being specifically targeted through the fresh round of sanctions that are designed to punish Russia for the escalation that it has carried out. So that is why this development is very, very important, because it marks a key milestone in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, coming to the last topic, in a related development, there have been accusations of sabotage at the strategic Nord Stream gas pipeline. Last week, it has been reported by Sweden's Coast Guard that multiple explosions were reported in the Baltic Sea, where there is an underwater gas pipeline called the Nord Stream gas pipeline. And apparently, gas leak has been reported in these pipelines. A similar development was reported earlier by Denmark as well in the Baltic Sea, where it reportedly detected explosions, underwater explosions, that have contributed to the leakage of gas from these pipelines. So most likely the pipelines have been damaged due to these underwater explosions. As of now, it's too early to say what exactly happened. There are a lot of speculations, a lot of theories floating around. We'll examine that as well. But before that, let's understand the significance of the Nord Stream pipeline project. This map here helps you understand why the Nord Stream pipeline is a key economic and geopolitical topic. The Nord Stream pipeline that you see here in the map, it is essentially an underwater gas pipeline that passes through the Baltic Sea. This is the Baltic Sea here, and it supplies natural gas from Russia to Germany. Germany has a critical dependency here on Russian gas supplies, and this is also further supplied to other European countries. Many European countries depend heavily on Russian gas supplies, including Poland, West European countries, Central European countries, etc. So the Nord Stream 1 pipeline was completed way back in 2011, and the project is largely owned by Russian petrochemical company Gazprom. Russia has invested heavily in this project. So after the successful execution of Nord Stream 1, a second pipeline was proposed in 2015 and the Nord Stream 2 project was all set to get started. But following the Russia-Ukraine war, Germany has suspended the project and has quit Nord Stream 2 pipeline initiative. But the first pipeline was still functioning and supplying key gas supplies to Germany and European countries. From the beginning of this war, Russia has tried to use the pipeline as a leverage against European countries. It has tried blackmailing the European countries, especially when they were imposing sanctions against Russia, and it is trying to gain a geopolitical leverage by threatening the European countries to cut off gas supplies for them. On the other hand, US has always opposed the Nord Stream pipeline project. It has been pushing European countries, especially Germany and others, to end their dependency on Russian gas, and it has promised to provide energy security to them through American supplies of oil and gas. So this has been an economic and geopolitical conflict even before the Russia-Ukraine war. The US also has been opposed to the pipeline project from the very beginning. So given the circumstances, the explosions that were reported could have been caused by any actor, could have been caused by any player. Reports indicate that these explosions were reported just one day before the inauguration of another key pipeline here called the Baltic Pipe. The Baltic Pipe is a new pipeline in the Baltic Sea that was built between Norway and Poland, and it was supposed to bring gas supplies from Norway to Poland so that Poland could reduce its energy dependency on Russia. So if the Baltic Pipe is inaugurated, then Poland will get gas supplies from Norway, and Poland need not depend on Russian gas supplies anymore. So there is a motivation for Russia as well to have carried out these explosions. Parallelly, there are motivations for US and European countries as well to have taken up this act of sabotage to disrupt the gas supplies through the Nord Stream gas pipeline. So speculations are floating around. Western countries are essentially blaming Russia because initial investigation led by seismologists, led by Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they've all indicated that these were definitely underwater explosions. It's not an earthquake-related seismic activity that was recorded. Clearly, there were 4 distinct explosions that happened just one day before the Baltic Pipe was inaugurated. So Western countries are examining the circumstances and they are blaming this on Russia. Because if Poland ends its dependency on Russian gas, then Russia cannot leverage the gas dependency of Poland on Russia, right? If Poland becomes more self-reliant here and moves towards Norway, it would affect Russian influence against Poland. So Western countries, they believe and they are blaming as well. They're blaming that Russia would have been directly responsible for these acts of sabotage. On the other hand, Russia has denied all these allegations. Russia denies these allegations. NATO is pointing out that Russia has a firm motivation to have carried out this act of sabotage. NATO went to the extent to even refer to this as a reckless, irresponsible act, equating it with an act of terrorism against critical infrastructure of its allies. But Russia has responded to these accusations, and Russia has insisted that it has nothing to gain by carrying out these attacks. Right? This is the other side of the argument. Because Russia has invested billions of dollars in the pipeline, which is owned by a Russian company. So Russia stands to lose by damaging the pipeline. Moreover, Russia has a unique leverage on Europe and Germany because of the pipeline, and it has been helping Russia in the war. So if Russia were to damage the pipeline, then it would take away the leverage it has on European countries. So the experts who believe in this theory, they are arguing that this could have been done maybe by European countries themselves or maybe by US, because they have a motive as well. This would end European dependency on Russian gas supplies, and it will make European countries depend on American gas supplies, thus increasing American influence in Europe. So there are a lot of theories, speculations floating around, but irrespective of that, it is a established fact now that Nord Stream gas pipeline has been damaged to an extent. At multiple locations, gas leaks are being reported underwater, and these were most definitely caused by underwater explosions. So definitely this was no accident. It was a pre-planned deliberate act, an act of sabotage. But who was responsible is a question that may not have answers. So going forward, we need to see and examine how this development will affect European geopolitics. Given the fact that Russia-Ukraine war is going on, this development has direct implications and there is a direct link and a connection between the two developments. So that's why the topic is very relevant for our exams. So with this, we have completed the 4 important topics that were in news with regard to global geopolitics. So if you found the session to be helpful, do let us know by pressing the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.